Welcome back to the Bitcoin Zodiac. I hope that you are amazing. Happy new moon in Leo. Are we ready to get into some fire sign energy? We love you, Cancer energy. We know that we need you, but let's get into some fire sign energy for sure. So we've got lots to cover. Lots of things happening. Please stay with me to the end. I'm going to do a bit of a breakdown of the Genius Act and what that kind of means for stable coins, for Bitcoin, those sorts of things. So stay with me to the end. But let's get stuck into the new moon in Leo. So it's a really powerful cosmic reset in this bold, like heart-centered sign of the lion. And astrologically, new moons are a time of planting seeds, of initiating new beginnings and setting intentions. So with this new moon in early Leo, the themes really revolve around self-expression, of courage, of creativity, of leadership, of romance, of play. So Leo is ruled by the sun, and so that identifies our core, our identity, our vitality, our willpower. And it's a fixed sign, so it's persistent, it's loyal, it's stable in goals. And it's also a fire sign, so it's got a creative spark, a passion, like an enthusiasm. So really the key words around Leo season is really authenticity, heart, joy, performance, pride, dignity, and visibility. So this is an early degree new moon. It's in 2 degrees of Leo, and it's a fresh, like fiery new moon that's like full of potential. So it's really a time to like reclaim your throne. It's very regal and really step into your personal sovereignty and lead your life from your heart. So it's a time to express your truth, begin projects and practices that allow you to be seen and to be appreciated. It's a time to nurture your inner child, to make time for play, for joy, for passion projects, and just to have fun for fun's sake. It's also a real time to sort of heal your ego, that shadow side of Leo, of that pride. So really explore where pride or fear of rejection has been like dimming your light, dimming your magnetism. So Leo is ruled by the sun. So this new moon doubles down on the theme of identity and creative purpose. And so really like what makes you come alive? Like where have you been playing small to protect your ego or to avoid being seen or to avoid failure? So the kind of intentions that you want to be setting during this new moon is like use this time to plant intentions around creative visibility, like publishing, performing, starting a brand or a passion project. It's also a time for romantic bravery, so really being open to love and to leading with your heart. As I said, a time for inner child healing, so reclaiming joy, play, and fun. And also it's a time for authentic leadership. So very much stepping into like a visible role and like reclaiming your voice. So what does this new moon have in store for Bitcoin? It is in Leo's rising sign, also my rising sign. And for those that are new here, a new moon is the astrological beginning of a new lunar cycle. So when the sun and the moon align in the same zodiac sign. So it's a time of renewal, of initiation, and of planting seeds. So in the financial markets, new moons often coincide with like maybe a local top, a shift in market sentiment, oftentimes turning points of new trends, and possibly the emergence of new narratives or speculative themes. So as I said, Leo is ruled by the sun. It's the source of light, life, and identity. And in astrology, it governs confidence, self-expression, creative risk-taking, speculation, and performance. It also governs luxury, prestige, and gold. So in financial astrology, Leo often corresponds to speculative investments like crypto tech, even like meme coins and things like that, very much in line with celebrity endorsements and influencer-driven kind of pumps. And the entertainment industry and luxury markets. So it is about luxury, but it's different. How do I explain this? It's got a different flavor. Like Leo energy is much more sort of flashy and outward appearance, as opposed to something like a Taurus energy, which is very much more like aristocratic and sort of inward comfort focused, like luxury for yourself. Whereas Leo can be quite flashy, sometimes a little tacky, that kind of energy. So it's very outwardly focused. And also gold and silver and other symbols of wealth and ego, like are very much tied to kind of like Leo energy. So a new moon can definitely spark like speculative enthusiasm in Leo, renewed risk appetite and bold market positioning, especially for assets like Bitcoin, which behaves like a high volatility kind of performance-driven Leo archetype, which totally aligns with Bitcoin's rising sign. So during this new moon period, even though in the kind of moon cycles, a new moon tends to create a local top and be a slowing of momentum in the markets, Leo does bring this fire, and fire ignites, right? So we could see this renewed speculative energy and like maybe increased retail speculation, definitely some bold predictions, and we're already seeing that, but some maybe FOMO-based rallies as well. And definitely like public-facing moves by Bitcoin influencers and institutions, politicians, and public figures. So there is bullish momentum, already like in play a little bit, and expect that to maybe intensify, but just be a little cautious. So it can also lead to overconfidence and like FOMO traps. So Leo's shadow is very much like ego-driven and ego-driven risk. So you don't want to be over leveraging on short-term pumps, getting trapped in like flashy narratives or hype tokens, or confuse, like you don't want to confuse confidence with clarity. So avoid like emotionally reactive kind of moves and stay very disciplined. Leo is performative, so don't trade just to be right or flashy, basically. In equities and risk assets, like Leo favors risk-on behavior, especially in things like tech stocks or luxury brands, AI, VR, entertainment sectors, those sorts of things. So watch out for big influencer announcements, celebrity endorsements, or like high profile IPOs or like branding moves around this time. Like this is the time that you would expect to see that. Also gold, because Leo is ruled by the sun and gold correlates here. So gold prices probably receive some renewed attention. And, even gold-backed crypto narratives or, like digital gold narratives for Bitcoin will probably resurface during this time as well. So definitely avoid trading for ego or validation. Don't react to like hype cycles or influencer tweets or, anything like that. Really stay grounded and avoid responding to those sorts of things. And avoid FOMOing into high leverage setups. Like Leo can really overpromise and underdeliver, especially when it's in its early degrees. So when it's in the early degrees of a sign, it's like baby Leo energy. It's like childish Leo energy. And so you do need to sort of like watch out for that. So definitely like set very clear intentions, and align with your creative or strategic vision, and use this energy to like plan visibility-based initiatives like launching a brand or something like that, and definitely take measured risks in new trend formations. So on the 27th of July, we have a transiting North Node sextile Bitcoin's natal Uranus. So the transiting North Node is this collective karmic direction, or like this evolutionary pull, and it represents where the world is heading. So when it's sextile, it's a 60-degree aspect, and it's very much a supportive, like opportunity-filled aspect. So things may not happen like automatically, but there's definitely like a favorable pathway forward. And then with Uranus, the planet of like disruption, innovation, technology, freedom, and like shocks and surprises, it governs Bitcoin itself as well as like decentralized systems. So when the transiting North Node makes a sextile to Bitcoin's natal Uranus, the collective direction of evolution supports the disruptive innovation that Bitcoin represents, especially in areas of technology, decentralization, and financial liberation. So the transiting North Node sextile really means like destined opportunities for technological disruption. So this transit really suggests that Bitcoin's role as a financial disruptor is very much aligned with where the global collective is heading. It's a window of evolutionary opportunity for Bitcoin to be rediscovered or revalued, experience like supportive adoption trends, and really also resonate with societal changes that prioritize decentralization, independence, and autonomy. So it's a pretty bullish aspect. There's definitely, but more than bullish in price, it's more bullish for adoption and like institutional movement or infrastructure and those sorts of things. So the North Node always encourages growth, and sextiling Uranus really opens the doors to like progressive regulation or favorable legal structures and expansion in Bitcoin's use cases, like Lightning Network adoption or like sovereign adoption. So we can expect to see like quiet building of financial infrastructure behind the scenes. Or we may not even see that because it's behind the scenes, but expect that that is what is happening at this time. So it's not usually like a sudden price spike or anything like that, like a square with Uranus may cause, but rather like a supportive and sustained upward trend, you know, if it's activated by real world catalysts as well. So the North Node really represents like collective destiny. So the sextile in Uranus means like the masses may begin to question like traditional banking or fiat banking systems more deeply. And, you know, please God, like let's see some of that. In a world where, you know, traditional banking, we're seeing much more sort of capital controls and things like that, especially in the Western world. And as I said, I'm going to get to what the Justice Act is, you know, really installing a little later. But, you know, we're hoping that the masses will begin to question traditional banking and these systems. We can also expect narratives around freedom, around autonomy, around digital sovereignty. We expect those to strengthen at this time. And just a new cycle of decentralized innovation is really being seeded into the collective consciousness. So this also may coincide with breakthroughs in Bitcoin tech adoption and use cases. Uranus, though, is unpredictable, but the sextile provides like a positive outlet for that chaos. But you may see some temporary volatility, and it may offer opportunity rather than loss. So we also may see whales or institutions may move quietly, like aligning to longer term strategies like within this window of time. So use volatility to build, not to panic. This is a really good time to DCA into longer term positions, you know, if you believe in Bitcoin's future. So again, it's the long-term accumulation strategies are really favored in this aspect. Uranus points to the future, and the North Node supports a sustainable path to that future. So consider like really familiarizing yourself with Bitcoin-related infrastructure projects, like layer 2 solutions, Lightning Network initiatives, privacy initiatives, those kind of things. So again, over leveraged swing trading is not advised at this time or any time actually during this whole period as we'll go through. But the Uranus kind of energy is unpredictable. And so this is a like longer cycle opportunity. So dismissing new trends or tech is not wise at this time either, because, you know, especially on the basis that it like seems too early. You know, this is an evolutionary gateway transit. So it's like very much aligned with those kind of shifts and trends and tech advancements and things like that. So yeah, so don't dismiss things during this time. And also really avoid clinging to old financial habits or strategies that ignore decentralization or future-focused markets. So this transiting North Node sextile Bitcoin's natal Uranus is a really encouraging astrological signal. While it may not bring like immediate fireworks and excitement, it really opens up like a karmic portal for Bitcoin to integrate more deeply into the evolving global financial system. So think of it like laying fiber optic cable like underground. You may not see that light immediately, but the high-speed future is literally being installed at this time. So really stay focused on innovation, decentralization, and focus on the long game. So next on July 31st, we have a Mercury Cazimi. And so a Mercury Cazimi occurs when Mercury, which is the planet of markets, data, communication, and decision-making, is within 18 arc minutes of the sun. And so meaning it's like sitting in the heart of the sun. So it's a brief window of clarity, insight, and laser sharp focus. And it really represents the rebirth of Mercury within the sun's core. So it's like a mind, like the mind is reset, it's like purified, it's revitalized. So again, we've got like, this is all happening in Leo. So we've got that Leo confidence, creativity, visibility, boldness, and speculation. We have Mercury, which is like thinking, messaging, trading, negotiating, analyzing. And then we have the Cazimi in Leo, which is like this radiant thinking, charismatic communication, and like visionary market leadership. So this moment really supercharges clarity around financial vision, creative projects, and speculative assets, especially those linked to tech, performance, or individual sovereignty. So this is really a moment of like market clarity and sentiment reset. So this Cazimi can function as like a mental clearing for the market. So traders and investors could gain like fresh insights, confusion lifts around like macro narratives, and new market stories or narratives emerge, especially within like crypto and Bitcoin focused media. So a bold new Bitcoin narrative may emerge at this time or like be re-emphasized. So expect that. Like it's interesting because we have got like Mercury is in retrograde. And so this is like this kind of like moment of clearing, of clarity. And Leo rules performance, speculation, and like ego-driven assets. So that includes Bitcoin and high-risk tech stocks and AI stocks and like attention-driven investments. So anything that's like kind of tied to that attention economy. So under Leo's influence, this Cazimi really supports like confident decision-making, risk-taking that's aligned with vision, with passion, with creativity, and strong messaging from influencers, founders, or public figures. So expect Bitcoin to respond to like influencer narratives or charismatic thought leaders or like spotlight moments. And then we could see like high volume days that are like triggered by news or specific announcements. So Mercury governs like markets, trading, and noise. And so this Cazimi allows us to filter the noise and identify the signal. So Mercury in Leo supports like creative technologies. So like AI, DeFi, you know, those sorts of things may come into focus. And then investor attention on like communications or Bitcoin media channels. So we can also maybe expect some surprise news from like charismatic tech founders like Elon Musk, Michael Saylor, like something like that you can expect during this period. So the Mercury Cazimi at 9 degrees of Leo is brief yet powerful, and it's a window of insight to market clarity. And it's a great time to refocus your mind, realign with your North Star, and be open to downloads of inspired vision, especially around Bitcoin and and Bitcoin innovation. So take note of ideas or patterns that come up. Mercury Cazimi really seeds may blossom in the weeks ahead, especially when Mercury squares or opposes other key points. I'm pausing this episode for just a moment to share with you one of our partners, the Sculpt Society. I'm obsessed with TSS, created by celebrity trainer Megan Roop. It's not just another fitness app, it's the most fun you'll ever have working out. You'll find sculpt, strength, and dance cardio all in one super accessible method that actually works. Whether you have 10 minutes or 50, want low impact sculpting or full body dance cardio, the Sculpt Society has you covered. Inside the app, you'll find over 900 on-demand workouts and weekly live classes, plus curated programs that meet you wherever you are, beginner, advanced, or even pre or postnatal. There's no complicated choreography, no guilt, just movement that makes you feel confident and strong in your own skin. You can stream from any device, anywhere in the world, and even download classes to work out offline. It doesn't matter whether you're in your living room or in a hotel room. So if you've been waiting for a sign to get back into your body and feel good, this is it. Click on the link in the description box and join the Sculpt Society to start your 7-day free trial today. You'll feel the difference after just one class. Let's get back into the episode. So on the 31st of July, we have a transiting Saturn semi-square Bitcoin's natal Mercury. And so a semi-square is 135 degrees. It's considered a challenging, like tension-driven minor aspect. It is similar to a square, but it's much more subtle. So it more manifests in like frustrations or delays or blockages. And they kind of tend to surface like indirectly, but also forcing like reassessment and patience. And because it's Saturn, which is discipline, restriction, and reality checks, in financial astrology, Saturn represents regulation, authority, structure, and limitation. So it also corresponds often with market slowdowns, increased regulation or scrutiny, and just a general sense of like investor caution. Mercury, again, governs information, trading activity, sentiment, and transactions. And in Bitcoin's natal chart, Mercury is a key indicator of price volatility and market narratives. So when Saturn challenges Mercury, communication and decision-making like kind of face tests, delays, or maybe some sobering news. So expect slower trading activity, reduced hype, or like a cooling of that speculative energy. News cycles also may carry themes of regulation, compliance, or government interventions. Like that's very much Saturn themes. And investors may hesitate to take risks at this time, like just resulting in maybe sideways or corrective price action. So Saturn often triggers legal or governmental pressure in the crypto space in general. So this aspect could coincide with something like that, like policy announcements or the Fed or the SEC or, even tax discussions, things like that. We could see some fear, uncertainty, and doubt coming through crypto markets, especially if news is like delayed or unclear. So we could see some short-term corrections or price stagnation, like this is pretty likely during this aspect, and volatility may compress before a larger move. So as Saturn's like restrictive energy slows down that momentum, there are kind of bearish undertones to this that can dominate, but it's not not necessarily due to fundamentals, but more because market confidence just feels a little restricted during this time. So because Mercury is very much tied to data, you can expect some miscommunication or errors. So expect information delays or trading errors or misleading narratives that could surface during this time. So it's not a favorable aspect for speculative trading for sure, because markets just really lack clarity and flow. So Bitcoin tends to react negatively when Saturn aspects its Mercury, because Mercury rules like fast-moving money, fast-moving sentiment, while Saturn is like slow and heavy energy. So price may test like some key support levels during this transit, especially if broader markets are also going risk off at this time. From a macro perspective, traditional markets like stocks and bonds also are likely to mirror this like cautious tone, especially in risk assets like tech or crypto. So expect like tighter liquidity conditions, some negative sentiment surrounding speculative assets. And this is really a better period for consolidation and like defensive moves rather than aggressive expansion. So you're going to see this as a theme through the rest of this episode, that Saturn is really in play during this time. So when a transiting Saturn is semi-square Bitcoin's natal Mercury, it acts like a temporary speed bump for Bitcoin and also broader markets. It's not a destructive energy, but it definitely forces like discipline and tests market confidence and really just demands like clearer thinking before action. Then on the 7th of August, we have a transiting Saturn quincunx Bitcoin's natal midheaven, and also a transiting Saturn quincunx Bitcoin's natal Chiron. So a quincunx is a 150-degree aspect, and it's an aspect of adjustment, of tension, and realignment. So you're going to sense this theme through the rest of this episode. It doesn't bring out like outright conflict like a square does, but it definitely does create some friction due to misalignment. So something needs to shift for stability to return. So with Saturn involved, the tension often revolves around rules, around structure, or authority that forces a slow restructuring or even a reality check. So when the transiting Saturn is quincunx Bitcoin's natal midheaven, the midheaven in financial astrology like represents public perception, like its market reputation, and just the overall trajectory, like a career status for like individuals or public value for assets. So Saturn quincunx the midheaven or signals external pressure on Bitcoin's reputation and public trust. So this could come in the form of regulatory hurdles or government oversight, concerns around Bitcoin's role in the global financial systems, and maybe a narrative shift, like Bitcoin's image may be challenged or need to adapt slightly. So this kind of makes a lot of sense with what is kind of coming up in the next couple of months, that these narratives may start to build, as we're also having in October, the Euro CBDC is being released. So they're going to want to push adoption for their CBDCs and their stable coins, right? So this may lean to sort of some narratives where it's painting Bitcoin in a not so favorable light, maybe not so easy to use, not safe. Is it safe to self-custody? All of those kind of narratives are probably going to come into play during this time. So you need to overcome that. You kind of need to have your own foundation of education and understanding on these topics. So you know that when you hear these narratives in the public space, that you're like, okay, I kind of can see what's happening here. So yeah, it's again is a cautious sentiment. Like investors may begin to question Bitcoin's stability or future direction, just resulting in like a more hesitant buying behavior. We could also see some sort of reputation-driven volatility, like negative news or headlines or regulatory discussions may trigger like sudden dips in price, even if the fundamentals remain unchanged. So we can expect a bit of a price slowdown as Saturn's heavy energy can create like this sideways trading or like a consolidation period as the market just reevaluates Bitcoin's position in the financial landscape. Like that's what we're sort of seeing with these transits. And then again, we've got Saturn playing a role again, transiting Saturn quincunx Bitcoin's natal Chiron. And Chiron is known as the wounded healer. It represents vulnerabilities, deep-seated issues, and the potential of healing through crisis. So for Bitcoin, Chiron can symbolize like market wounds, like trust issues, or hacks or security breaches or regulatory fears. And as I said, again, I think that there's going to be a lot of added pressure to try and dissuade people from self-custodying Bitcoin, to sort of present it as that it's not safe, that it's risky, that it's dangerous, that you're not responsible enough for 12 words. All of those kind of narratives that we've heard a million times before, but anyone that's new to the space may take them on board quite seriously. And so, I'd really encourage people to dig deep and really learn about self-custody. I have a free course on the Bitcoin Zodiac website, so the bitcoinzodiac.com/education. And there's a free self-custody course if you're interested and you want to learn more about that. We can also expect maybe some regulatory pain points, like governments or institution may highlight on purpose Bitcoin's weaknesses. The same old things: volatility, illicit activity, all of that stuff. I love how they never talk about the illicit activity that's carried out with the US dollar. That always just kind of amuses me. But anyway, we could expect maybe some security or trust issues, so fears around market manipulation or hacking, systemic exchange risks could surface, and again, self-custody sort of narratives. So we can expect to see some short-term price dips as well. They're definitely possible, just as traders react to uncertainty or perceived threats in the market. But really what Chiron and Saturn together are all about is healing through structure. So while the transit can feel heavy, it often pushes Bitcoin towards greater maturity. So Saturn may demand a more robust infrastructure, stronger compliance from exchanges, better security protocols from us, and procedures, or clearer institutional frameworks. But in the long run, these painful adjustments really build confidence and they stabilize the asset. So the combined influence of both quincunxes, when Saturn simultaneously quincunxes Bitcoin's midheaven, which is the public image, and Chiron, which is its vulnerabilities, we've got reputation plus weakness. So it's we can expect some market adjustments, and Bitcoin's public narrative may clash with institutional realities, creating the short-term selling pressure or uncertainty. So it may be a corrective phase. Price may enter a testing period and consolidating just as the market either digests new rules or new narratives. But in the end, it will encourage long-term strength. Saturn's influence, though it is difficult, it often just solidifies value by forcing maturity and shaking out weak hands. So this period is really about maturity and restructuring. It's not about quick gains. Saturn's influence is like a stress test for Bitcoin's reputation and vulnerabilities. So short-term price corrections may be uncomfortable, but in the end, they pave the way for stronger adoption and acceptance. So on the 8th of August, we have Mars opposing Saturn in retrograde. So when Mars opposes Saturn in retrograde, we have Mars that represents action, momentum, aggression, and risk-taking. And it's often correlated with volatility, fast, price swings, and really bullish impulses. And then we have Saturn, which is also in retrograde, which really symbolizes restriction, discipline, fear, regulation, and slowdown. So an opposition at 180 degrees creates this tension between Mars, between the action of Mars and the resistance of Saturn. So it's like driving with one foot on the gas and the other on the brake. So momentum is kind of blocked by reality checks. With this aspect, it typically brings a period, it's a frustrating kind of period in the markets. Optimistic moves from Mars really face heavy resistance from Saturn. So bullish sentiment really struggles against external constraints like regulation, interest rate policies, or market fear. So there's definitely a cautious or defensive atmosphere in the markets, especially risk assets, including Bitcoin, will often stall or retrace during this time. Bitcoin really thrives in this like high risk, high speculation environment, which is this Mars energy. But then Saturn's opposition like introduces like regulatory friction or like news driven uncertainty. So reduced liquidity or volume is expected as traders just hesitate to commit fully. And you can also expect to see when there's low liquidity in the market, you can expect to see false breakouts or pullbacks like after initial bullish attempts. So the key themes of like Mars in Libra opposing Saturn and Aries is like Mars in Libra is not in its strongest, like it's in its detriment. And so actions are diplomatic, they're slower, they're indecisive. And then we have Saturn retrograde in Aries, which highlights like unfinished business regarding independence, competition, or leadership struggles. So for the markets, this kind of signals like a struggle to maintain bullish trends just due to like hesitation, possible standoffs between regulators, Saturn, and crypto or Bitcoin innovators, Mars, and like a price compression or sideways movements as the market, waits for clarity. We could see also periods like very much tied to news of like increased volatility, very much tied to news events. So markets may react like sharply to policy updates or rulings or earnings announcements or central bank statements during this period. So there's definitely a potential for Bitcoin to test key resistance levels, especially difficulty breaking, especially like having difficulty breaking major resistance zones. So even rallies can kind of like expect to face pretty quick rejection. So again, a period of consolidation and correction. This is just that classic like pause and test energy, and Bitcoin like might range or retest key support and resistance levels before really like building strength again. Saturn retrograde really acts as this like market regulator. So expect government, SEC, Fed, institutional news that like temporary slows Bitcoin's upside. And then you've got Mars in Libra, which suggests like collaboration over competition. So partnerships, alliances, or corporate announcements definitely may surface during this time with conditions or restrictions attached. So the Mars Saturn retrograde opposition like really represents like this stall phase for the markets where just patience, discipline, and like risk management are really, really crucial. So Bitcoin's price may experience short-lived rallies followed by corrections, just reflecting this like push-pull energy of this transit. I'm briefly interrupting this episode to speak to you about one of our partners, Ritual Supplements, and in particular, Ritual Stress Relief. It's the first of its kind supplement powered by BioSeries technology. Unlike typical stress supplements that fade, Ritual's dual action formula gives you instant calm followed by all-day support. It works with your body's natural cortisol rhythm, helping you respond instead of react, ground instead of spiral. Its unique extended release blend delivers nature's calming adaptogens like ashwagandha and lemon balm when your body actually needs them. That means no crash, no fog, just clarity, focus, and nervous system balance. It's a sigh of relief that keeps going. So if you have spikes in your stress levels or are simply feeling dysregulated, give Ritual Stress Relief a try. Click on the link in the description box to find your perfect daily ritual. Okay, now that we found our Zen, let's get back to the show. So on the 8th of August, we have this transiting Jupiter square Bitcoin's natal Jupiter. And Jupiter represents expansion, optimism, wealth, and growth. And it's really strongly tied to market sentiment, investor confidence, and big money flows. So when it's a square, which is a 90-degree aspect, it creates tension, it creates overreach or imbalance. So while Jupiter squares absolutely can bring opportunities for growth. They also carry a lot of risk of excess, of overconfidence and inflated expectations. So when a transiting Jupiter forms a square to Bitcoin's natal Jupiter, it really highlights the cycle of speculation, of optimism about Bitcoin. Definitely may rise, but so does the risk of like bubbles, of market overreactions, or sharp corrections following euphoria. So the nature of Jupiter squares, like, is really exaggeration. So markets may react with like overblown optimism, especially around like media hype, news, or institutional narratives. So we could expect some volatility, like after a rally, like to see some aggressive profit taking or sudden corrections. Like this is super common, just as the market like adjusts to reality. So it's very much about expansion versus sustainability. So Bitcoin's price may definitely push beyond sustainable levels, creating this like whipsaw pattern. So like where it spikes and then abrupt pullbacks. So we can expect some increased speculation during this period. Bitcoin can definitely experience like FOMO driven runs, as Jupiter just amplifies that risk appetite. And then just be really aware of over leveraging. Like traders definitely may take on excessive leverage, like expecting big moves, which then can really backfire if the market corrects and clears out all of that leverage. So we could also see some positive news or announcements that like inflate expectations, but a square really signals like disappointment of those expectations if they aren't met. Jupiter's energy often also ties to like whale activity or major like fund flows. So definitely watch for large trades, inflows, or manipulative spikes. And we can definitely see some upside potential in this transit for sure. Bitcoin may attempt like new like highs, may test those all-time highs due to like expanded optimism, but there is downside risk to this aspect. The square suggests that any excessive rally could really lead to a like very sharp correction, especially when speculative energy just overheats. So definitely be looking at like volatility zones. Like this is a time when Bitcoin may oscillate between euphoria and fear, with like definitely this is a trader's market. This is a trader's aspect with some strong intraday price swings to take advantage of, but just be careful of like over optimism, over hype. Also within the broader financial markets, we can expect like equities and risk assets to be impacted too. So Jupiter squares can really lead to short-term overvaluations in tech, in crypto, and in commodities. So this aspect also sometimes coincides with like inflationary pressures or overly optimistic forecasts, which can be corrected. So for traders during this transit, definitely take advantage of the upswings, like use that optimism-driven rallies for short-term profit taking rather than expecting these trends to really play out long-term. Don't overexpose yourself during these volatile price spikes. Expect whipsaws, like use smaller position sizes and really plan for quick reversals. And avoid overcommitting too much capital. Like a Jupiter square often signals like market tops or overheated phases. So I don't mean the entire like market cycle top, but maybe a local top at this point. So look for long-term entries as well, like after sharp pullbacks. Like corrections following like extreme overexpansion can really present good entries for you, and definitely like stay grounded in the fundamentals. Don't get caught up in the media-driven hype. Jupiter square exaggerates both good news and bad news. So a transiting Jupiter square, Bitcoin's natal Jupiter, is a double-edged sword. Like it can really fuel sharp rallies, but they're often unsustainable if driven by hype rather than solid fundamentals. So for Bitcoin, this transit often coincides with exaggerated price action and the need for market correction afterwards. So on the 9th of August, we have Mars at 1 degree Libra, opposing Neptune in retrograde at 1 degree of Aries. So Mars again represents action, drive, and aggression. And in financial astrology, it often triggers sudden market moves and speculative trading and sharp price swings. Neptune, especially when in retrograde, really brings confusion, illusions, and lack of clarity. So it's very much linked to deception, unrealistic expectations, and market manipulation. So an opposition, which is an 180-degree aspect, creates this tension between the desire to act with Mars and the fog of uncertainty brought to you by Neptune. So this is a period where impulsive or poorly informed decisions can really lead to losses. So the themes of the Mars-Neptune opposition is really one of market confusion. Like Bitcoin's price may react to misleading narratives or false news. So think sudden price pumps followed by dumps when the truth emerges. So there's also this kind of like illusion of strength under this aspect and this transit, sorry. And Mars really tries to push price forward, but Neptune clouds like the real trend. So this can definitely cause fake breakouts or traps. We can also expect some weak momentum, like efforts to drive Bitcoin's price higher just kind of may lack some substance and volume at this time, really resulting in like some kind of choppy or directionless price action. So also during this period, there's a very high risk of scams or market manipulation because Neptune rules deception. Like this aspect can really bring fake news, rug pulls, or misleading narratives. So we can kind of expect some volatility, but with no clear trend. Technical analysis is very challenging at this time. Even astrological analysis is challenging at this time. And Mars creates action, but Neptune erodes the clarity. So expect some false starts, sudden reversals, and maybe some unpredictable swings. Also some liquidity challenges, like just with lack of clarity, we can expect like low liquidity in the market. So trading volumes are likely to be inconsistent and just feeding into this like whipsaw or liquidity trap kind of price action. So short-term uncertainty is likely on the cards during this period. And, Bitcoin can show like very sharp intraday moves, but follow through is like usually pretty weak. So there's a potential for false breakouts. A move past resistance or support is unlikely to hold, just as Neptune kind of dissolves that momentum. We can also expect retail traders to get very caught up in fear or FOMO. So like heightened emotional trading, just driven by confusing signals, like that frustration that the confusion causes. And so for the broader markets, like stock markets could really see rumors, uncertainty around economic data, or unclear Fed or central bank communication, just really leading to indecisive price action as well. And commodities like gold or oil, with Neptune's influence, it could really trigger like price distortions in these markets due to geopolitical confusion or misreported data. So the Mars opposite Neptune in retrograde really can create an environment where fear, confusion, and misinformation can kind of like distort market action. So for Bitcoin, this often means fake pumps leading to mixed signals and traps for overconfident traders. So the wisest approach during this period is just to avoid chasing short-term moves and really wait for the market to reveal its true direction. The sort of sense of all of these transits together is a period of like stagnancy and frustration and just pushing through treacle and trying to interpret information. And so we've got some glimpses of positivity in there, but overall the positivity is kind of muted through this period of time. And then that really brings us into the full moon in Aquarius on the 9th of August, which I will dive into in the next episode. But now let's talk a little bit about stablecoins and CBDCs, because I think it's really, really important to talk about these things. Really, what happened over the last week or so is that the JET was eventually passed through Congress, sort of paving the way for US-backed stablecoins to be, introduced to the market. Even though we already have US-backed stablecoins, they're really sort of aligning with the government now, having some very clear regulation around them. So I think it's inaccurate to discuss these sorts of things without giving a kind of macro backdrop of this. And so I really want to talk also about China's de-dollarization strategy, because I think that this is an important key factor on why this legislation is being pushed through at this time. And interestingly enough, we talked a lot about this in the really early episodes of the Bitcoin Zodiac, about the BRICS nations and about China's moves and how China was positioning itself. And sort of that was in the time when, the Biden administration was in the relation. We talked a lot about the relationship between the Biden administration and the Fed and how that might change. It would be interesting to see if it changed, under Trump. And so let's talk a little bit about that. So China has been reducing its US Treasury holdings, and it's now at the lowest level since 2008. So Trump will say, or has been saying, that this is an attack on the dollar and that it weakens demand and it raises interest rates. And I don't know, I find the wording around that just kind of funny and ridiculous, because it's like the bully in the playground then gets upset when other kids get together and stand up to it, right? And that's the kind of energy. And I just find it really gross, actually, like just very like gross energy. But anyway, China has had a 5-step plan basically to challenge the dollar dominance. And it's been going on for quite some time. It's introduced currency swap deals with over 40 countries. It has been dumping USD reserves for gold, again, for quite some time. It's been promoting trade in yuan through their Belt and Road Initiative. It's rolled out a digital yuan, and it's really rallying the BRICS nations together for a new global currency. So yeah, the US should be threatened by this. I don't really see it as an attack per se on the dollar. I've always seen this as more of a defensive play, of a defensive play from China, taking care of their own interests. And I don't know, I think that can be expected, to be honest. So Trump's having a bit of a tantrum about it and saying, oh, China's attacking the dollar and attacking us. But, you've been attacking a few people recently too. So let's be honest about that. President Trump has had this really kind of interesting interplay with Jerome Powell, who is the Fed chair. He's really been pushing him publicly to cut rates or to resign. So for anyone that has read The Creature from Jekyll Island, you will know that the central bank, the relationship between the Fed, the Federal Reserve, which is neither federal nor a reserve, is a very different relationship to the US government than other central banks. Like, for example, Australia, the central bank in Australia has a very different relationship with the Australian government than America and the Fed have, because although they are two different entities, they're both wholly and solely owned by and ruled over basically by the Commonwealth of Australia. So we discussed this actually in previous episodes. I'm not going to say that I predicted this, but I kind of just asked the question in those early episodes of like two entities like the Fed and the US government have always worked very much hand in glove. And I wondered what that would look like if their interests were no longer aligned. And so we're starting to see that a little bit. And we've just had last week the and establishing National Innovation for US Stablecoins Act. Jeez. And this basically introduces regulation for US dollar-backed stablecoins. So we also expect another piece of legislation to pass, which is a digital crypto bill. And so we expect that to pass in late September or October. And these really have the potential to transform the US financial landscape. So one of the holdups was going back and forth was this wording around CBDCs, because President Trump was very clear that he vowed that there would never be allowed to be a CBDC, a central bank issued digital currency, allowed in America. And because he feared that this was handing too much control to the central bank. So, which I mean is completely true, but interestingly enough, he's kind of circumventing that. And so the US plans to launch US-backed stablecoins issued by large corporations like Tether and Circle. They already have them. So this is basically placing the dollar on the blockchain. And they say that it is to modernize payments and maintain global USD dominance. So their sales pitch for stable coins is that they are 100% reserve 100% reserve requirements and transparency for the issuers. They are fast, low cost, 24/7 global transactions. They have programmability and accessibility, extending the US dollar reach worldwide. And so interestingly enough, and this is, I think, a key point and why I mentioned China earlier, is that this really strengthens demand for US treasuries, because as China are dumping US debt, they have very nicely found new buyers in these stablecoin issuing companies. So they will purchase especially short-term bonds, and they add them to their balance sheet, and they are part of their reserves and part of their backing of their stablecoin. And so this really is perpetuating this US dollar Ponzi system and the dollar's reserve status throughout the world, because the US needs buyers for its debt. And so that's really what these stablecoin companies have started to do. And we've also seen in different countries like Turkey, Argentina, where their own currency is not stable, they've experienced hyperinflation, that they have been using stable coins to sort of hedge that. And so they've been purchasing stable coins, US dollar denominated stable coins, to hedge that. So I can really see that as this expands and this is really legitimized and introduced into the financial system, that a lot of these kind of smaller fiat currencies, the smaller ones initially, will become redundant throughout time. And so this will, really strengthen the US dollar's dominance for sure. But I think a lot of those smaller currencies will tend to become irrelevant. And what we need to remember is that stable coins are literally centralized tokens tied to fiat. They are literally shitcoins. So whereas Bitcoin is obviously decentralized and censorship resistant. So the government has indirect control over these stable coins. So even though they are not CBDCs, they're not issued by a central bank, the central bank doesn't control these. These large corporations like Tether and Circle, who issue the stable coins, the issuing companies are centralized entities that are under government influence. So it's more of an indirect government control. There's definitely censorship risks attached to these stable coins. They can absolutely be frozen or seized, really making them CBDCs in disguise. I mean, they're not CBDCs, they're just DCs. And they're really funding debt. So the stablecoin reserves buy US debt, again, supporting and propping up. It's really like robbing Peter to pay Paul in this US debt-based Ponzi scheme that we all find ourselves entangled in. So really, like, the big picture takeaway from this is that the world is really entering this period of time, this period of what is being called financial revolution and financial innovation, where the US is really countering China's de-dollarization with blockchain-backed dollars. And so while these stablecoins aim to modernize and preserve US dollar dominance, realistically, they are tools of surveillance and control, just like CBDCs. And unlike the real decentralized financial innovation and revolution that is Bitcoin. So what I would suggest, if you find all of this confusing, I would really recommend that people check out Efrat Fenixon's work on the new monetary order. I think that her work is really, really important, really insightful, and really clear on how this is all playing out and how this is working and how it might affect you. But what I really want to leave you on is that while all of this is being passed, a couple of days ago, $2 billion in Bitcoin and related securities was purchased by Trump Media and Technology Group, which is a social media company owned by President Trump. Now, it's not directly owned by him. It's in a revocable trust on the 20th of December when he was US president-elect. He wasn't yet inaugurated. He moved his stake that he owns in Trump Media and Technology to a revocable trust. So Trump transferred 114.75 million shares, which is 53% of the Trump Media and Technology stock, to a revocable trust of which he is the sole beneficiary, according to securities findings. So basically, Trump is turning one of his companies into a Bitcoin reserve company. So as all of this financial revolution and innovation is being introduced in the United States, the president is stacking sats. So that's kind of what I want to leave you on, is that notice the signal amongst the noise in all of this and recognize the real financial innovation and the real financial revolution that's happening. And so I would just really encourage everybody. I never tell anyone what to do on this podcast. And I'm not going to say for you to buy Bitcoin, but what I would say is study Bitcoin. Study CBDCs, understand what they are. They're coming to Europe in October. And really study what Bitcoin is, but more why Bitcoin is, who it was created by, the groups of people that sort of birthed Bitcoin into existence, and why they existed, what they were wanting to achieve with Bitcoin, the problems that Bitcoin came to solve, the institutions and the systems that Bitcoin came to disrupt. And then you can make your own mind up. But you may want to join President Trump in stacking sats. So I hope that brings some clarity. If you have any questions, then please feel free to email me. Just go to my website. You can fill out the contact form and just send me an email. I will always reply. And until then, until the full moon, peace, love, and Bitcoin.